History Conversations. Hello everyone and welcome to History Conversations, a program dedicated to exploring history, airing at 9 p.m. every Saturday night on Mr. Hung's channel. There was a path that had no sound of gunfire, no explosions, and left behind no footprints. It quietly and secretly operated until the South was completely liberated. Yet this path was rarely known to the public, and even today it is seldom mentioned. That was the monetary route during wartime. But how exactly did this secret financial lifeline work, and how did it manage to stay hidden for so long? Right after peace was restored in the North in 1954, the Democratic Republic of Vietnam began planning financial support for the South, mainly in the form of the currency issued by the Saigon government. At that time, Saigon was a free market, goods were abundant, and shopping for anything was easy as long as one had one thing: money. To obtain this currency, the Foreign Exchange Management Department used the state budget, brought it to Hong Kong to exchange for US dollars, then transferred the dollars back to Vietnam and sent them into the South through the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Our cadres in the South were responsible for receiving the money and exchanging it into Saigon currency to buy food, weapons, medicine and ammunition for the battlefield. The challenge was that while getting the money was difficult, exchanging dollars for Saigon currency was 3 times harder. Every year, the North sent millions of dollars to the South. How could such a large amount be exchanged without being exposed? If someone casually carried bags of cash to exchange, suspicion would immediately arise. A normal person with no clear occupation suddenly possessing hundreds of thousands of dollars, there had to be something unusual. So our cadres came up with a method: divide the money into smaller portions and take it to gold shops. At that time, throughout Saigon, especially in the Cholon and Gia Dinh areas, there were hundreds of gold shops. Each day they would visit 4 or 5 shops, exchanging about $500 at each. In about 15 days, the entire amount would be converted, and then the process would start again. With so many gold shops, the enemy couldn't remember their faces or detect the pattern. However, this method didn't last long. Exchanging small amounts like that made it difficult to pay for large orders. Sometimes it took 2 to 3 months just to gather enough money. By then, our soldiers could die of hunger before being killed by bullets. So the cadres thought of another way, taking advantage of the black market exchange rate. In the early 1960s, $1 was officially worth 140 Saigon dong, but on the black market, it could reach 190 dong. The cadres pretended to be overseas. Vietnamese returning home spoke fluent English and exchanged money on the black market. This method not only yielded more Saigon currency, but also carried less risk of exposure, since all black market transactions were illegal. Each exchange involved a few $1,000s, and because both sides feared being caught, they kept each other's secrets, allowing everything to run smoothly. But this method had its own difficulties. Even though black market exchanges could convert large sums at once, they could only be done about a dozen times a year. After all, what kind of overseas Vietnamese would keep returning every few months with thousands of dollars to exchange? It was better than using gold shops, but still couldn't meet the revolution's growing financial needs. Not to mention transporting the money by car from the north to the south through the Ho Chi Minh Trail was a major issue. American bombings were relentless. No matter how well the money was hidden, it was hard to preserve. The heat from the explosions often caused the bills inside the containers to burst or burn. So our people came up with a daring solution, turning all of Saigon into a money link. The cadres formed connections with wealthy merchants in Saigon. The method was simple. The merchants would withdraw Saigon currency and give it to us, and we would repay them in US dollars. But walking around Saigon, carrying millions of dollars to exchange, would certainly draw attention. If caught, We would lose not only the money and personnel, but also the entire network. Thus, the cadres decided to exchange dollars with the merchants at black market rates, but on one condition: the merchants had to hand over the Saigon money first. After receiving it, we would give them a check. They would take that check to a bank in Hong Kong to receive the dollars. The question was, how could absolute secrecy be maintained? If the check was discovered, the entire operation would collapse. The secret lay in the check itself. It wasn't an official document like those from banks, but just a page torn from a wall calendar. Inside were the recipient's details and the amount, all written in numeric code, looking like a random phone number. If captured, the enemy would simply think it was a meaningless scrap of paper. But why would merchants agree to such a risky deal with no legal guarantee? If we defaulted, they would lose everything. Naturally, they had their doubts. However, the merchants chosen were all sympathetic to the revolutionary cause. Moreover, exchanging money at black market rates earned them a hefty profit. At first, the transactions were small to build trust. Once that trust was secured, the system ran smoothly. However, that was only how we obtained Saigon currency. The revolution still needed other types of money, especially Cambodian reals, to purchase essential goods such as food, clothing, medicine, and chemicals from Cambodia. So how could we acquire Cambodian reals, buy supplies there, and transport them back to Cu Chi, Vietnam without being detected? That's where we'll pause today's episode of History Conversations. Thank you all for watching and for your continued support. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's get this channel to 1 million subscribers soon.